idea what's going on, but I think we're back in the studio. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're supposedly live. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Don Baker. They've done all kinds of renovations to the studio, and we only had about 30 minutes to try and do setup, which is why absolutely nothing works. Just for the information of the guys in the control room, I'm looking at the screen, don't see any CG stuff at all. And we're watching what's coming or what's going to Grande or whatever. We haven't done a phone check, and this is a live call-in program. So, I mean, we are flying by the seat of our pants here. And I'm not wearing pants.
We're debugging as we go here.
Yeah. So we're trying to get the laptop configured so that we can communicate with the control room to let us know who's on the phone. We'll work on that as the show goes on. Ooh, we just lost picture. Hey, look. Okay. So anyway, this is going to be lots of fun, and I'll just I'll get the regular announcements out of the way. This is the Atheist Experience. We're live every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. We're back in the studio at Public Access Community Television. Channel Austin, I think it's channelaustin.org, or is it .com? Hey, there was some CG for a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, we've been doing the show from Dillahunty International Studios, that palatial and wonderful, fully equipped and fully functioning studio. And now we're back here, but we're sponsored. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And the ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. You can go to our website, www.atheist-community.org, for more information about the ACA and our events. There's a calendar of scheduled events up there as well. We do a number of other things, including happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck at 17th and Guadalupe. And in addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about that program. We were supposed to be live yesterday. Unfortunately, I had to work, so we canceled yesterday's show, and we'll do what we can to make up for it. I appreciate everybody's patience while we deal with both messes in this studio and disasters in my work schedule and everything else that has messed up the shows that people appreciate. As I mentioned, it's a live call-in show, and we will have the telephone number up for you shortly. What we'll end up doing is, after the announcements are over, Don will have a little presentation quickly to talk about while we sort out more problems. We'll post the number. I'd like to try this week, if at all possible, to have callers from outside the Austin area not to call, unless we just have no callers. Now that we're back up and live in the studio, we've been taking calls over Skype and stuff, and we'll try and go back to that once everything else here is working. But if you're outside of Austin, hold off for a while, and we'll see if we get local calls first. Preferably some people who might happen to disagree with us on one thing or another. I'm interested in finding out what you believe and why, where we agree, where we disagree. We promote positive atheism. We're here to support the atheist community in the Austin area, but also we like to kind of try to raise the level of public debate and dialogue, have conversations that matter, that may bring some insight and information to different people. I'm not here to try and take your hope and faith away or anything like that, although it's a bonus if I do. I only get paid in bonuses. I don't get paid for any of the rest of it. But we'll have more information about that as well. The ACA, in addition to all the other events, there should be information on the website about the next blood drive, food donation, street cleanup, things like that. And after this program's over, everybody involved gets together and goes to dinner. And tonight we will be returning to the atheist mecca, Threadgills on Riverside.
One of many.
We've been going to Pluckers up at Lake Creek because that's closer to Dillahunty International Studios, which I just love saying. That's just fun. But this week we'll be going back to Threadgills after a long time away, several months. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us at this or any of our other events. You don't have to be a member to attend, although you can find out more about membership at the ACA website. If you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, pick on, pester, please don't.
Perturb.
You perturb. You got another one? Please don't. You can just pick up the phone and call in as soon as the number's up, and we'll be happy to talk with you. We only screen calls to get rid of prank calls. We don't screen calls to get rid of crazy. As
crazy makes good TV.
As many of the clips that have made their way to YouTube demonstrate, crazy gets on all the time. And there are people out there who are convinced that crazy's on when there are no colors. But
Right.
so thanks everybody. We have a huge studio audience filling up this room, welcoming us back here, and I'll try that again while we try and get that up and running.
It's plugged in properly.
But while we're sorting problems, actually, I've got a line here that's flashing. Oh, it went away. So Don, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good. Well, we'll go ahead and let you get started.
Okay.
And we'll
okay.
we'll let them try and sort out problems.
We haven't been on the air in a while. We've been on the internet all summer, but our usual format of the show is that we have a host who is here pretty much all the time, and a co-host whose responsibility who rotates. I'm only on every 5 weeks or so. Co-host responsibility is to bring in a topic for discussion or to introduce, and when you call, you don't have to talk about the topic. You can call and talk about anything related to religion or atheism or science or reason, all these good topics. So on previous shows, I've talked about the impact of the Bible. I've called it the greatest hits, and it was really sort of a series on how the Bible has had an impact on the world through acting through the religion, and we did a long series on that. But you can turn this around and say, well, what are some of the impacts on the world that have happened that have been despite the Bible or that have been at odds with the Bible? And there's one in particular that I think is pretty darn interesting, and that is the case of the abortion and the pro-life movement, which is heavily steeped in Christianity, but is not at all based in biblical Christianity. You have to really strain in order to look for places in the Bible that support the pro-life movement. And I want to kind of have a little bit of a devil or God's advocate dialogue going. fall of man, and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, and all of humanity is therefore cursed. In the flood, we have all these children who were deemed wicked just because God didn't like the people and saved Noah and his family. Taking God's name in vain in the commandments. To make slaves of a whole race of people, and so this notion that children are innocent is completely at odds with many of the Bible stories where children are being punished for the sins of the parents, and there's many more examples of this. There's a claim in the Bible that unborn children, or there's a claim in the pro-life movement that unborn children are alive, and in the Bible. Especially in the Old Testament, there's a very strong notion between being alive and breathing, and very often you'll see when someone's dying, they exhaled, they expired, they breathed their last breath, and then they died. And these two things are at once, and unborn babies don't breathe, and so there's this question whether or not you would actually claim these to be alive in the biblical sense. And then we can get off on this very interesting tangent of when, in the Old Testament there's no notion of a soul, but in Christianity in the New Testament there's a notion of a soul, and so when does that happen? When does ensoulment happen with a new child? And well, before the soul is there, you can't really claim that unborn child is human. Right, it's just like an animal or just like meat, any other thing. But afterwards, they become human, and there's a question of, isn't God smart enough to maybe put the soul in after the threat of abortion has passed?
Considering the large number of conceptions that result in spontaneous abortions, miscarriages, things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is God is really kind of the biggest abortionist, if you will, because if you're going to say that these things are acts of God or the will of God, there's a huge percentage of them. If you count non-implantations, birth defects, you count miscarriages, you count stillbirths, and so on, and all these things. There's a claim in the...
But the Duggars are trying to throw a curve to those statistics.
The Duggars?
Another quiverful.
Right. There's a claim in the pro-life movement that all human life is sacred, and you hear that a lot. And but here's another Bible quote that kind of turns that on its ear. Leviticus 21, 17 through 23. You want to try that one? This is
21 what?
17 through 23. You're pretty good at whipping those out, man.
I know where they're at.
Okay.
21, although it starts at the bottom there. No descendant of Aaron the priest who has any defect is to come near to present the offering made to the Lord by fire. He has a defect. He must not come near to offer the food of his God. He may eat the most holy food of his God, as well as the holy food. Yet because of his defect, he must not go near the curtain or approach the altar and so desecrate my sanctuary. I am the Lord who makes them holy. And this is, of course, the NIV.
Okay.
So if you were to grab a King James...
It's very different. You want to read the King James?
The defect is in his stones.
Okay, what does that mean?
Any castrated male.
Right.
Anybody who's got, you lost a testicle in the war, you're screwed. You're not allowed to enter the Holy of Holies.
Yes.
Which could have a very different meaning in other contexts.
Okay. But here we have a case where in the King James version, there's even more. It goes on about whether a man has a blemish or is blind or lame or a flat nose or these sorts of things, and or dwarf. So these people are.
Well, they actually list specifics. The guys who did the King James translation decided there were a lot of people they didn't like. broken-footed, broken-handed, crook-backed, dwarf, blemish in the eye, scurvy, scabbed, or hath his stones broken. No man that hath a blemish of the seed of Aaron, the high priest shall come nigh. So basically, I just made a bunch of lists. We don't want to let those folks that sit out there and beg when you're coming into church. We don't want them coming in here, so we're going to add them to the list. Ooh,
That's right.
please, sir, can I have some more?
But here's an example where you have a whole class of people.
We lost all calls.
We lost all calls. We have a whole class.
I don't even know if there were any that were legit.
Okay. We have a whole class of people here being basically labeled as not able to come to worship, right? They're officially Okay, they're officially
We're streaming.
We're streaming. Okay, in the middle of the stream. Okay.
So I'll do when you reach your next stopping point, we'll do a special welcome for the stream folks.
Okay, why don't we do it right now? That's fine.
Are you sure? I'm just kidding.
Go for it.
Okay, so for those of you who are watching on the stream, who've been sitting there for the last hour going, what the heck is going on with these guys? Can't they do anything right? The answer is, yeah, we can.
It just takes us a while.
It's a new studio. We didn't have as much setup time as we wanted, and there were lots and lots of problems, right down to the fact that I had full phone lines, and now they're empty, and I still don't know who they were, but it doesn't matter because they're not there anymore. As a reminder for the folks out there, they'll put the telephone number up. If you're originally the plan was if you're outside the Austin area, in other words, watching it on the stream from I don't know, Tennessee or something, don't call because we were going to try to see how many people we could get from the Austin area to call in. But since we've had so many problems, I'm not going to necessarily put that restriction on there. The guys in the studio already know to try and keep one of the phone lines available for Austinites and theists and people who want to tell me what a fat bald moron I am.
Right.
So welcome to the streamers. Don is talking about more greatest hits from the Bible.
Sort of, yeah.
In this case, movements that religions, in particular Christianity, have spawned without appropriate biblical support.
Yes, that's an example. And we're talking specifically about the pro-life movement and the Bible and how it's not supported by the Bible. So we talked just now about human life being sacred. I don't know when we're going to start taking calls.
When we get them.
When we get them?
When I get a message that there's callers.
Okay. But are you going to be able to see who's calling, or you're
just keep on going?
Keep on going. Okay. I'm stalling for time here while I fix some of these problems. There's a claim I've heard that God owns the unborn children, and that they're His property. And if that's the case, if you own a rabid dog, and this rabid dog, is kind of going to do its own thing, and you may or may not have a whole lot of control over it, and it goes and bites your neighbor, and maybe mauls your neighbor's kid, right? Whose responsibility is that? Who is it? You going to blame the dog? Well, maybe you're going to scold the dog, but the ultimate person to blame is the owner of the dog, right? So if God owns the unborn children, it seems to me that He should be responsible for them, and He should pony up the money needed to raise the child and educate the child and these sorts of things. And one easy way to do this, I think, is to tax the churches and make sure that this money flows the appropriate way. So if He's responsible. And if He's responsible for children, isn't He responsible for all mankind? In which case, this whole doctrine of man sinning and going away from God and such is really God's fault. So this whole idea that God owns the unborn is really kind of flies against a lot of theology that's been built up over the millennia. And if you want to give that up, that's fine. I think it's terrible theology personally, but you need to really sort of understand the implications of your decision to do that. There's a claim that Christians just want to help children, and I can kind of empathize with that. I feel sorry for children who suffer. I feel sorry for children who grow up in households where they have religious parents and they're not allowed to go see doctors, but people have to pray for them instead. Where And we have a lot of cases where we have children who could have been saved by medical treatments who end up dying or end up very ill because the parents decided to pray for them instead. And so you generally see the religious people not drawing any attention at all to those folks, because they want to kind of have it both ways. They want to say, well, if you come and meddle with those children, it's religious persecution, but at the same time, we get to go and meddle with other people's families because God tells us to. So there's this rather sort of a spin going on with these things where in one situation the decision's one way, in another situation the decision's somewhere else.
So we do actually have, I've been informed of one caller.
Okay, you want to take a caller?
We're going to try to talk to Ryan in St. Louis. You can be our first test call.
Can you hear us, Ryan?
Hear us? I'm wondering if Ryan can hear us.
Hi, I can hear you.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm from St. Louis. I'm a theist, and I have a question regarding morality.
Okay.
From an atheist point of view, what is the purpose of morality? Like, what is the, you know what I'm getting at? I mean, most atheists seem to be moral people. They seem to be, nice. I mean, of course, there's exceptions, but what's the reason for that?
I'm not quite positive what you're asking. Are you saying why act in a way that is general?
Any fundamental reason to be moral? Like, for example, there's people say there's herd instinct or whatever that'll.
No. You don't have to rely on anything as sublime as instinct. Morality can be viewed in a very practical way. I'd rather not be killed. I'd rather not have my stuff taken. And so I find a bunch of other people who would also rather not be killed and not have their stuff taken. And so we agree that we're not going to kill each other or take each other's stuff, and that we're going to enforce this stuff. The idea that there's no practical benefit to behaving decently is absurd. We are an empathic group, partially, but we also live in communities as a collective. And it's natural to realize that, hey, if I'm going to have to live around all these other people, some compromises are going to have to be made. I don't have the ability or the right to just run around and do whatever I want without considering the consequences to other people. However, where by and large atheist morality may differ from theistic morality, I don't have any objection to somebody doing something, an activity between consenting adults, for example, that doesn't affect anybody outside of that situation if they're enjoying it. So my understanding or limitations on what I consider moral and immoral is entirely based on the effects that it has on the individual and the group.
Okay, well, but let's say that you could benefit somehow by kind of breaking from that rule.
Sure, you can. Yeah, you definitely can. Slavery is incredibly beneficial to the person who owns the slaves.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why, societies for the longest time advocated slavery. It's why the Bible advocates slavery, because the people back then realized, hey, we really benefit from being slaves. But all you have to do to find out where the moral problem lies is talk to a slave who realizes that they're not actually benefiting from this. So that you have over time developed a number of core principles, one of them being this idea of individual freedoms which end when they encroach upon the rights of others.
But where does that even come from, individual freedoms? I mean, why even have that? Why not have...
Because
what if society could improve by having a very small percentage of the population enslaved? And hypothetically, that would make the rest of society into paradise.
Okay, but now you've separated. First of all, I don't necessarily buy the hypothetical, but you separated out two different groups. You've said this group is getting special rights and this group isn't. And while you can do that, if you so choose, my position is that is untenable for me.
Okay, but you don't really know where that comes from.
It comes from me. I am the author and decider of what I consider to be moral. There is no need for an external source. I can assess a situation and determine whether or not I think a particular action in that situation is either moral according to my standards or immoral according to my standards. I am the arbiter.
Well, as societies, we decide as a group, right?
No.
Well, you have your own morality, right? But
Correct.
As a society, we have the social norms and these sorts
We
of
have
things.
shared values.
We have shared values, and those ultimately derive from our evolutionary past, right? We have an evolutionary history where we're smart and we can reason, we can empathize with the suffering of others, and we can understand the consequences of our actions. And people can remember when we do something bad, and they can factor that into how they deal with us in the future. So there's this notion of reputation that that comes into play because of these various factors. So ultimately, I think our morality comes from our evolutionary past and the fact that we're social species, and we have to have mechanisms to get along in order to survive. We're a better species because we're a social species. We can work together to solve problems. We can put a man on the moon. We can hopefully address hunger and these sorts of things.
See, it's really easy in the areas where we agree, which is why I started with simple examples like murder and theft. Those are shared. Your moral assessments are based on your values, and value is very subjective. You know, how much is this coffee cup worth to you? How much do you value it? How are you going to be upset if it gets broken? You know, that's going to change based on the situation, etc. Some things are very easy. Other things are a little more complicated, and it is. When I go to make an assessment of whether I consider something moral or not, I'm using my values, but I am open to being convinced that I have made an error, that I have, for example, a conflict where I have this value, and they do not reconcile with a given action. For example, the idea that I value the freedoms of all individuals equally. If I were to also hold slaves, that would be a conflict. And ironically, that's exactly the position that you find a lot of religions and a lot of past cultures being involved in. Slavery being a prime example. The waters get muddy as you begin to look at the seemingly innumerable number of situations, and some things are harder to figure out. That's why we have, you know, I'm sure you've probably seen in email or on a website these various hypothetical ethical dilemmas. You posed one yourself, you know, if the world as a whole would benefit if one group got marginalized, would that be a sufficient justification for it? And the answer depends on whether or not you value the freedom and rights of all of those people equally. Is your system such that it would be a violation of a higher valued ethical principle, the rights and freedoms of everyone, to do so?
Well, it seems like it's pretty arbitrarily chosen, though, that you would say, like, all people have equal, or, you know, equality or freedom or something like that.
Well, I think that's
I mean,
a property of the fact that...
I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I just think it's like, you know, why you pick that? Why not, you know, pick some other rule? Or
No, it's not true. It's not true, and it's not arbitrary. We didn't just say, let's go ahead and go with freedom for everybody. We learned over the course of millennia which things really are beneficial on the whole, which things encourage progress, societal health. It's not like we flipped a coin and said, yep, we're going to free the black people. That's insane. The use of the word arbitrary and the position that these are things, you know, like we're just picking our morals out of a hat is absolutely insane. This is the result. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I rail against biblical views of ethics on a regular basis. It's because this book includes the best thinking of a bunch of Iron and Bronze Age people who thought it was okay to kill unruly children and to own slaves and to treat people as property and to go in and rape and pillage. This is the best thinking they could come up to. We have improved upon that. We have built upon what's common in the past so that we have a better understanding. The fact that we're so good at it, that it's almost intuitive to know, ooh, what he did is wrong, and we don't have to sit there and think about it, is a testament to how far we've come. Nothing about this is arbitrary. It's not just a, hey, I feel like today I'll give rights to everybody.
Well, I mean, it kind of, well, another thing, it would be like most people want to reduce the amount of suffering in the world. That's like another one that's basically, I mean, arbitrarily chosen. Why?
What makes you think that's what makes you think that's arbitrary? I would like to. No. Hang on.
Limit suffering. Why not increase suffering?
Because
or keep suffering the same.
Because okay, God, this is so painful. Would you like to suffer more or less?
Less.
There you go. Was that arbitrary or was it based on your preference?
No, that's just based on I'm a mammal and I try to avoid suffering, or like I'm an animal basically.
Okay.
You just answered your own question. You just said the exact same thing that we've been saying.
But why would it be, I try to avoid suffering. Why not? Why would I want to stop others from suffering? I mean,
okay.
Because we're all fundamentally the same?
Because we're all very, very similar. In much the same way that you'd like to suffer less, I'd like to suffer less. And we've gotten to this point where you and I can work together to see that we suffer less. It is in your interest, it is in your best interest to assist us in ensuring that everybody suffers less, because guess what? Here's the super thing. You're a part of everybody. You're a part of that set. You're not off by yourself saying, me versus the world, I want to suffer less, screw those people. That doesn't work. We know it doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried it over the millennia.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate the call, Ryan.
Yep.
Great. I don't know if we have other callers waiting yet or not. The lines are full. Jen's got stuff. I don't know if you got more to go to or not.
No, keep going. Keep going.
All right, we've got, is it Gregory and Eugene?
Yeah.
How are you, Gregory?
Somewhere between fairly spiffy and moderately neato.
I'll go with spiffy.
Okay. All right, what do you got for us?
Anyway, I've got a notion for what God might be if it exists. And first of all, let me preface this with saying I have zero stake emotionally or intellectually on whether or not you guys agree with it. I just thought I'd throw an idea on the table.
Okay.
So you're trying to define God?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. All right.
If God exists, I would consider it a synonym for the phenomenon of human creativity. Because that's basically what we attribute to everything we've ever done, individually or collectively, for good or ill. We consider it an act of God. As creative beings, we still don't understand what exactly our creativity is or where it comes from. We can see the fruits of our ideas, whether it be coming together to build a radio antenna or a cannon, but as far as where those ideas come from, we still haven't figured that out yet. My basic understanding is that
I want to jump in.
don't
Yeah, go ahead.
exactly know. My basic understanding is that we haven't exactly figured out what causes consciousness or thinking, or what the exact definition is, just that we can do it.
Well, there's you can make a God of the gaps argument there that we don't know X, therefore there must be God. But I wanted to respond to your definition directly, and it seems to me, if I were going to define God, I would define it as sort of the sum total of our human ignorance. I would plane it on ignorance. It's like when you worship God, you're saying, well, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I want this outcome, or it's an act of God. The tsunami or the hurricane, whatever, is an act of God, and I don't know what caused it. And you even kind of touched on that at some point with your creativity. It's like we don't know how the creativity happens. So anyway, that would be my counter proposal to you.
I'm glad that you're not particularly invested in what we happen to think about that definition, because while there are things about it that I like, in the sense that you're trying to put a label on what, by and large, most people mean at a different level when they're talking about God. I prefer Don's definition. The sum total of human ignorance, I think, is about the absolute best possible definition when you're talking about things at this kind of meta level. But the idea that God is human creativity, and like I said, I'm glad you don't have much invested in this because I'm just going to smack that down, is no different for me than saying God is this coffee cup. This coffee cup already has characteristics and a name and a label associated with it, and so does creativity. It has characteristics and it has a label, a number of labels, depending on languages. And the God label has to have, in my view, something in addition, something that is specific to it. It's not the rose by any other name thing. I want to call a rose Philoglan. Okay, why? What does Philoglan mean? Well, it means a rose. Well, then why don't you just use the word rose? I mean, and I'm not talking to you, obviously, but if we're talking about creativity, then we should use the word creativity. And if somebody's using God as a substitute for the word creativity, it seems to me that they're implying some additional characteristics that are perhaps unstated. That the best you could maybe do is say that they're using it as God equals creativity plus.
Well, one statement I've heard multiple times from atheists, particularly Dick Dawkins, is that God can be seen as an imaginary friend, which I can totally agree with. And just because it's imaginary doesn't completely invalidate the concept, just makes it impractical for any external need of worship or obedience. And I think that's basically what God is, humanity's collective imaginary friend that we keep reinventing because our imagination keeps growing.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as everybody's clear, it's contingent on the human imagination. Then I'm happy.
But yeah, I don't see any reason to. I don't see any reason to coddle someone with an imaginary friend or show deference to their imaginary friend when it comes time for legislation or public events. And I certainly am not bound. I'm certainly not bound by what they think their imaginary friend wants me to do.
Yeah, and I think since most human beings are clearly creative beings, and in an immediate sense, we're creative beings because most of us at some point figure out how our parents made us. It's very easy to take that and apply it to everything else and say, okay, if humans are created by other humans, then there's probably something that created the first humans. And there's probably something that created everything else, and then you can make the leap to an ultimate creator. But
and that would be a huge mistake.
You can go another direction on that. You can look around and say, well, are there uncreative things? For example, I don't know, a rock. Rocks don't strike me as very creative. If there are uncreative things, then it tends to reason that there could be things that are uncreative. For all I know, rocks and sand and dirt have probably just always been here. And maybe that's the way it is with the universe. Maybe the universe has just always been here without a creator, without a need for a creator. It's just a lot easier to imagine that the universe had a creator because I'm a creative being.
Yes, it's anthropomorphizing.
Yeah.
It seems like you're saying creation is creativity is a mystery, and the universe is a mystery. Therefore, they must have something to do with each other.
Well,
that's just
we live.
Most people leap at.
We
and
live.
I find that unfortunate.
We live our daily lives relying heavily on inference and induction. We expect the world to be pretty much the same today as it was yesterday. We're so good at it. I mean, here's a really good example for anybody who's driven a car for any length of time. I'm 40 now, so I've been driving for, 30 years or so. But when you're driving, especially if you're driving a route you've known before, you're not thinking about, your brain is working. It knows what your feet are doing, where your hands are on the steering wheel. It's surveying your speed, the speed of the cars around you. It's being observant for changes in speed, lights, signals, warnings, etc. And yet you can be thinking about something else entirely different, having a conversation with somebody in the car. And by and large, this isn't going to be a problem. I'm not saying go texting on your phone or anything, but by and large, you can do multiple different things. And it's because you are living your life based on expectations. The problem is that what happens when those expectations go wrong? Well, they don't go wrong so often that we really have to worry about it. But when we extend our inference to these vast scales, we are making a terrible error. Okay, I was the spawn of two living things, and they were the spawn of two living things, and therefore, eventually, this has to go back until, I mean, you could use that sort of induction as, therefore, there must be two gods who spawned the first living thing. Oh, but each of those had two, and so on, and so on. Induction and inference fail at some level, which is why when we begin to talk about what things really are, what exists, what is the nature of reality, we are wise to depend on deductive reasoning instead. And I agree that I think I think you're pointing out the mistake that a lot of people make and why it's made. I've never said, for example, I fully accept that religion as practiced can be beneficial to individuals, and I fully accept that invisible friends can be of value. The question is, does that justify us, maintaining a relationship with an invisible friend forever because it was of value here, or are we avoiding a greater value that we might find, that we might discover, if we abandon these things that aren't real and focus instead on reality, which is why I ended up with my mantra of...
In a collective sense, I think humankind is on the verge of outgrowing the need for that imaginary friend, and that could take us, the next 2 or 3 or 5 centuries. It's going to be a long, hard struggle letting go of that, but I could see that as an eventuality. At this point, I consider myself just as much of an atheist as I do a theist.
Well, that's absolutely absurd.
Well,
That's like saying I consider myself just as much a basketball as not a basketball.
well,
That's
sure, why not?
Well,
that is a
like you're in the
completely
process.
irrational, illogical
Cut him
statement.
some slack.
Yeah.
No,
Feel good about it.
I don't. Okay, hang on, real quick.
Limit myself to
Hang on, real quick. I don't cut anybody slack. PZ Myers was on Nonprofits 2 weeks ago. He said something that I completely agree with. We welcome ideas, we welcome discussion, we welcome everybody, but do this with the knowledge that when you say something stupid, you're going to be flayed alive. And when people say something like, I am just as...
I open myself up to that. That's why I said that, and I don't mind being played.
But
here's my position. Life's too long to settle for one set of options and to settle for one set of beliefs. I can have fun with either one. I can look at the universe and see the presence or absence of a creator and look at either one and say, yeah, I can dig that. If there's a creator, no big deal. I'll meet it when I die. If there's not a creator, no big deal. I won't even know about it when I die because I probably won't consciously be aware that I'm dead.
Well, it sounds like you're in the middle of some sort of longer-term process, and I think for a lot of atheists, as they sort of come out and deal with these things, it's a multi-year thing of examining the evidence there, and I can see potentially being somewhere in the middle of that and empathizing with both sides. That's what I meant by cutting slack, is I can see somebody in a position where that they can see the value of both viewpoints, but maybe
the
you...
atheist scientist crowd definitely makes more sense. But the irrational, religious, mystic crowd is a lot of fun to hang out with and talk with. And
well,
I think
it's probably
fun
more
to...
emotionally satisfying.
Yes, but the words have meanings, and theism carries with it the meaning that one believes there is a God, and that is a binary position. Either you believe that there is a God, or you do not. There is no in between.
Maybe you can change
that's the
over
fun
the
thing
course of the
about
day.
any dividing line is you can take an eraser, erase that line, and have...
No, you can't.
Objectively, wait.
No, you cannot.
Objectively, one is true and the other isn't.
No, you are not understanding me. You are not understanding me because you are setting up a false dichotomy. I said either you believe that a God exists or you do not believe. That is not the same thing as you believe a God exists or you believe no gods exist. That is something different. There is a single claim. God exists. Either you believe that claim or you do not believe that claim. There is no middle ground. There is no line to erase. I can draw you a Venn diagram that demonstrates it. This is logic 101. There are no middle ground options. What you're doing.
A statement that I think we can both agree on, and have you tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
That in the objective sense of truth, one or the other is true, but both cannot be true. It's either true that there is a God, or it's true that there is no God.
Correct.
Both are incapable of being true.
Correct.
However, I can believe whatever I want. I can
You're right.
believe both.
No, you can't. You can't. You cannot do that. How can you possibly do that?
Aren't logical sometimes.
No. It's not a matter of not being logical. No, stop. It's not a matter of not being logical. It's a matter of honesty. You cannot simultaneously say, I believe there is a God and I believe there's not a God. One of those is a lie. One of those you don't really believe, you're just saying. You cannot be in that position.
You're assuming a brain's a monolithic thing. People compartmentalize their beliefs all the time.
There's a
Well,
difference
I'm not saying
between.
you're wrong. I just don't see how you're right.
Humans are messy.
Wow. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I just don't see how you're right. That sums up the problem. Thanks.
Thanks for calling.
This goes back to a lot of people profess a belief. And I don't care what people profess. It matters on some level. I'm a Christian. Maybe you're not. But that's what you're professing, and on that level it matters because your actions are going to, reflect how people perceive Christians or Jews or Buddhists and Muslims, anything. But in reality, in actuality, on a single issue, on a single statement of X exists, it is true that either that statement is true or that statement is not true. I fail to see how anybody could say they simultaneously believe both of them. Now, maybe you believed one yesterday and a different one today. Maybe you're vacillating back and forth between the two of them. But to say that you simultaneously believe X and not X is insane. You should go seek professional help if you think that that's true.
Well, you can't build anything on that, right?
Yeah.
That's a contradiction, and you can't make any real moral decisions or you can't base any decisions on a premise like that.
Which is why I flatly assert that the people who do that are deceiving themselves and or trying to deceive others, or batshit crazy. You didn't strike me as that type of person. So I think you're engaged in a little self-deception. Real quickly, after this program's over, everybody involved in the show gets together and goes to dinner. I'm assuming somebody's called ahead. If you haven't, there's your reminder. That we'll be going to Threadgill's on Riverside after the show's over. We're on till 6 o'clock, and we'll be down there at Threadgill's about 6:30. We got about a half hour left in the show. I'm waiting to find out who the next caller is.
Come on down and join us. We enjoy chatting with our audience after the show, and sometimes we get into some very good topics. We often have 20 or 30 people down there, although this is our first time back after being away quite a while, so I don't know how many people will show up. So,
okay, we've got Ernest. Are you there?
Who did you say?
Ernest.
Ernest.
They left off an E. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
I can't complain.
You could.
Though what I can say is that for years I did complain
I'm just being
about
contrary.
you guys.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So though for years I did complain about you guys.
Okay.
You complain about us specifically or atheists in general?
No, you guys specifically.
Okay,
you guys were the devil.
Okay, so now you decided you can't beat them, you got to join them.
Isn't that interesting?
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Definitely. I served on Vance Russell's church. It's called Arise Fellowship. Yeah. Joe Cruz's church down in South Austin. I'm an ordained minister still today for some reason. My best friend that owns the Ministerial Bible School, and that, I'm going through a phase. I was the person that you guys were talking about earlier who wouldn't take their kid to the doctor while I stood in faith.
Okay.
Wow.
And, part of my deconversion process began when I really asked myself, is this moral?
And
wow. It just, as a Christian, the things that I would do, I would go into H-E-B supermarkets and grab people who were in wheelchairs and literally throw them.
To what end were you doing that?
Excuse me?
Why would you do that? I'm confused.
Well, because for 3 years I sat under Rodney Howard-Browne, one of the biggest televangelists in the world, and you just think that you're anointed with power when you're delusional.
I see.
No, all right.
So you thought you were a vehicle of faith healing?
Absolutely.
I see.
And you actually would walk into an HEB and pick somebody up out of their wheelchair?
Absolutely.
And nobody arrested you for this?
That's dangerous.
Because they damn sure should have.
Yeah, they really should have. I was just talking to my wife. I lost every Christian friend that I have.
Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's a difficult process.
It is. I mean, and I was talking to my wife, and I told my wife, I said, Kelly, I would not let me around my kid 4 years ago. I wouldn't let myself around my kid 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I bet though the you from 2 and 4 years ago wouldn't let the current you around your kid now.
Isn't that interesting? Man, I should just lock myself up. But, I called in a couple of weeks ago. My schedule's so busy with work and traveling and what have you that I wasn't able to call back in. But, Vance Russell, calls the show, a evil spirit of Satan sent to tempt and...
We're flattered.
Sent to tempt and defuse his believers.
I got demons running all through me.
And what's so funny is that this is supposed to be, you guys want the funniest thing in the world to go see. Go see people that think they're prophets that will just let anybody walk into the line, and they'll try to read your mail, or so to say, prophesy something that only you and God could know, and they miss it so bad that, it's unbelievable. And one other thing that made me leave was at the level of, I don't know what you want to call it, man, control, hypocrisy that's in the local churches there is so great that Vance's own spiritual son turned into a homosexual and divorced his wife, and the theft and everything that occurs within these circles are unbelievable. And
wait, he has a son?
People can't see this; they need to go to the church.
Well, I mean, I have to kind of take exception to one thing. Vance has a son who, because of the control of the church, turned into a homosexual?
He was a homosexual, and it's not a physical son, it's his spiritual son. He birthed this guy in the faith, put this guy over control of his money, his people, and literally...
So he was a gay man who was forced into living a heterosexual life by the church's control?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And,
I was going to say, if we found a way just to turn people gay, everybody would be dressed nicer.
Yeah, well, he did dress pretty nice.
Well, yeah. It's regrettable how people get in this sort of mind games, right? And sort of get chewed up by it, I think, and spat out.
Although I will take the challenge. Which of us is dressed nicer?
Yeah, well, and my whole purpose is, man, you guys keep doing what you're doing, because in the time that I deconverted, we lost our friends. I performed my brothers and very close friends of mine their own weddings, and when they see where I'm at today, they're just like, Ernest, you're a total fake. And no, I wasn't a total fake. Nobody would make me do the things that I did.
You changed, right?
If I wasn't a fake. But keep doing what you're doing, because it was in those times where I was literally suicidal, in the times where, I deconverted, nobody would talk to me. I thought, well, holy crap, there's nothing left.
Wow.
And spending time watching the shows, watching YouTube, maybe these guys really have something, actually gave me energy, strength to be where I'm at today, in which I couldn't live a better life.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for calling in and sharing that, and congratulations on, escaping and embracing reality. And you don't have anything to worry about. I have no plans on stopping anytime in the near future. So.
Well, yeah, so I took your advice, and I got a priest outfit and went downtown to Harrisburg and got a video camera.
I don't know it's fair to say that I gave this out as advice. I did it.
You said to wear it and look at the level of
yes, Matt did that at one point.
Respect you get. And I said, well, I wonder how much respect I'm going to get if I go out and try to deconvert people.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
you did that in that getup?
Yeah, and right in Harrisburg.
Sorry, I went on a completely different track.
Oh, this sounds
I
like
did-
great YouTube video.
I did recommend that people try that just so that they could,
Yeah,
could
you're
see how
like,
different.
so you believe in God, huh? People are like, yeah, Father, I really believe in God. Why do you believe in God? How do you know He exists? And you just hear their answers. But if an atheist comes up, then I have to immediately switch it to, well, no, I believe God is real because the Bible tells me it's real, and I believe slavery is just and perfect, so that you don't blow your cover.
It is true that when
That is
someone
so
finds out you're an
schizophrenic.
atheist, the shields go up, and
Well,
and-
because if you try to literally, you just end up, an atheist will ask you questions that you'll literally be stumped. You can't
yeah,
answer.
we're
you
good
can't
at
help.
that.
But look, you guys deal with callers that people really want to hear. Keep working. You're making a difference in people's life. I live a very sane job. I'm very wealthy and to do good in my life today. And guess what? It doesn't take prayer. It doesn't take tithing, which, man, I wish I could have all my money back.
Me too.
And, I live a wonderful life. I'm not tormented. And devils aren't chasing me around, spying on me all the time. And, good job, guys.
All right. Well, thank you very
We're
much.
very happy for you. That must have been a challenging road to take, and we're proud of you.
It is. An atheist, you got to remember, be gentle with people. You don't want to turn them off.
Wait, you sure you were watching this show?
Well, no. I mean, with the person
we
who's
pull no
being
punches
converted,
most of the time.
I got
a
you.
converting person,
Yeah.
like me. I could have been easily turned off if it wasn't for this guy, Brad Religion, that watches your show all the time. He knew exactly how to deal with me with kid gloves.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for calling, and we appreciate it. And congratulations. Keep living and enjoying your life. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye-bye.
It's a good note for other people out there. We've had this discussion before about how many in the pulpit ministers don't actually believe anymore, but are afraid to say so because, hey, by the way, what the hell are my career path options? If I quit doing this, what job can I get?
And social services, some
you know,
sort, right?
I think there are plenty of options, but I'd say that any option is better than continuing to live a lie. You're doing real harm, and this is true for, I think, ministers who do believe, as in addition to those who don't believe. You are converting people to something that I consider to be delusional. And as somebody who used to believe it, I don't think that Christians are stupid. I certainly wasn't stupid when I was a believer. I just didn't have the understanding that I have now. Which isn't to say that I might not change my mind again if new evidence came along and I gained some better understanding of the way reality
Yeah,
works.
we're not
And
preaching a gospel
Yeah,
here.
this isn't-
We're advocating that people use reason and find out for themselves. Look at the evidence themselves.
But if you're in a position where you are living a lie and leading other people, to continue in something that you know or you believe to be not true and harmful, get out. Stop. Do anything. Unemployment's at an all-time high, or a long-time high, and I know that scares some people. But I couldn't do that. I don't know how. It may explain why Ernest was talking about potentially being suicidal. I couldn't imagine being in that position where I was continually forced to say things that I believed were untrue.
Well, I think part of the process of conversion or deconversion, if you will, from someone who believes a lot is they end up having to give up a lot of their social ties. That the religion, one of the good things that religion does is it gives you a social circle. It gives you this community, this ready-made community of people that kind of look out for each other, and that's a good thing. But if you're having to leave that community, you end up losing a lot of your network, your social network. And you end up potentially shunned by those people who want you to be part of the fold and who have been taught to, that you bring people into the church, and if they're leaving, then they're obviously a bad influence on this community. So that's a tough thing to deal with. So I guess he's sort of on the other side of that and dealing with it. But I'm sure there are a lot of people right now who may even be watching who are in this sort of situation where they're having to get out of their social ties. And that's one of the reasons why we have the Atheist Community of Austin. We want to try to replace that. We have a community of people. We have the TV show and outreach, but our social events are just as important because a lot of people are kind of lonely or isolated, and it's very nice to have a community to come to and meet new people and just sort of start anew if you have to.
Yeah, if you're a Southern Baptist and you move to Austin, there's 23 churches you can go to where you'll be welcomed right off the bat. But if you're an atheist and you move to Austin, there's at least one group, if not several, where you can come and socialize and be welcomed and not feel like you're a stranger in a strange land.
And if you're outside Austin, let me add, our frequently asked questions on our website has a little section on how to find atheist groups in your area. And there's some national groups that have groups. There's meetups, atheist meetups, and it's not terribly hard to start one.
And there's new options coming.
Yeah.
There's new options coming, but yeah, if you can't find a group in your
area,
area,
you are not alone.
Start one.
Yep.
Ours started with an ad in the newspaper. Real quickly, I got a couple notes to do, and then we'll get to Dylan, who's been holding. Thank you. The creator of Fritz the Cat is producing a cartoon version of the Bible.
Okay.
And people are pissed.
Is this like the Lolcat Bible?
No. He's legitimately making a cartoon version of the Bible.
Okay, well, I'm also thinking of the Brick Testament.
Yes.
Which is a lot of fun. It's the Bible cast into Legos.
It's kind of like that. See, I had a cartoon version of the Bible when I was a kid. And I remember, for example, when you get to a story, for example, of Lot escaping Sodom and Gomorrah, then getting blitzed and having his daughters have sex with him. There's just, you saw like a little cave entrance, was drawn, and then the story was, and then Lot's eldest daughter, being the eldest, came in, and her father drunken, she did lie with him and conceive. And, there was that, but that was it. I mean, you saw like a cave entrance. Well, in this guy's version of the Bible, it's
more graphic.
I don't think it's like necessarily X-rated, but it's like, here's Lot, here's his daughter, here's a blanket covering up, but I think that's a breast, and people are absolutely livid, and I couldn't be more pleased, and not just because I find it incredibly funny, but because I've been saying for ages, if you think this is the good book,
try reading it.
Would you let me pick out passages to read to your kid? If you think this is the good book, that this is the Word of God, and that there's nothing in here that is objectionable, and that everything in here is true, would you be willing to let me pick out passages to read to your kid? I'll read them exactly as they're written here. Would you? I wouldn't. Come on now.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things. There's
And I'll answer questions. That's what you're afraid of.
That's the real scary part.
What did it mean? What's that mean when it says she lied with her father and conceived? She had sex with her dad and got knocked up.
And yes, that's incest.
Yeah. Also, Rabbi David Wolpe, I believe is the name, has come out and announced that not getting vaccinated is a sin. Now, this puts me in a really odd position because with all the anti-vaxxer nonsense and even the unfortunate recipient of the Atheist Alliance International 2009 Richard Dawkins Award, Bill Maher, who received it for Religulous, being a flaming nut job when it comes to medicinal issues and an anti-vaxxer, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are afraid of vaccinations, and some of them think that they have good reason to be. And I don't have time to go into all of the ways this is just wrong, but it puts me in an odd situation because on the one hand, I'd like to praise him for encouraging his congregation to go out and get vaccinated. On the other hand, I'd like to smack him upside the head for implying that there's something sinful about not doing this. The question is, do the ends justify the means? Yes, you managed to go out and get some people vaccinated, but telling them that it's a sin or that God wants them to get vaccinated. Oh yeah, we all know religions can be very useful. so can lies. Oh, wait. You can convince anybody to do anything for bad reasons as long as they sound fairly compelling. And because I said so is moderately compelling to a child, and because God said so is moderately compelling to most people, evidently. So that's what ends up getting used. I think it'd be a much better world if people were compelled to do things for good reasons. And so I'm in this odd position of being grateful that at least some people are going to, follow his advice. On the other hand, they think that they're sinning if they don't.
Putting God in the mix, it just doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
Doesn't help at all.
As Jen pointed out in the email, it's not a sin, it's just stupid. So we've got Dylan. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Thanks for waiting.
I was actually calling to say I love your show. I recently became atheist, and this is something that kind of helped move me in that direction.
Well, that's
great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
What were you before?
I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, and for the past 2 years, up till about 2 weeks ago, I was a theistic Satanist. And I would listen to all the arguments against the existence of God, and somehow in my mind kind of said, well, that works for God, but my beliefs are still valid because of the whole personal experience thing.
Right.
And eventually I just came to the realization that, I'm kind of making up logic to work for these beliefs. And the only thing I can know is of my own existence and how I should interact with the world.
Yeah, it's, we talked before about personal experience. Of course, if God revealed himself to me privately at my home, I'm now justified in believing that God exists. But I'm also reasonably intelligent enough to understand that nobody else on the planet would be justified based on my experience. And in the absence of, in believing God based on what I experienced, and in the absence of being able to confirm that, personal experience is notoriously unreliable. I would have to be, I'm sure if there is a God, he knows exactly what it would take to demonstrate his existence to me and convince me, and to convince me in such a way that I would be assured without wondering about whether or not I've suddenly fallen off the bus or something. If there is a God, he'd know how to do that. And I would think, gosh, can we tell them to turn that down? Holy crap. The studio next to us has something loud on that's incredibly distracting, so I apologize. But yeah, if one of the things that we've done is that I did, because I felt that I had some personal experiences that perhaps justified my beliefs, and when reality did not line up with my experiences, I went back to review them. Well, what exactly did I experience? Whether it's we're all standing in church singing and you get the goosebumps and whatever, and you attribute that to the Holy Spirit. If in fact you actually look at what you experienced without necessarily attempting to
behind it.
Yeah, without assuming the cause, and investigate that experience, you find that, hey, guess what? I've had that same kind of experience at secular movies and secular concerts, and when somebody that I love tells me that they love me, that type of thing, they're not always the exact same experience, but they're often in the same realm. And it's important to note that what I used to attribute to some supernatural, unearthly cause, I can now attribute to naturalistic causes.
Right.
Or not give attribution at all. It's fine to say, I don't know why this is the way it is, or why I feel the way I do, or why I experience it that way. And it would be wrong and intellectual suicide for me to assume or pretend that I did have an explanation, specifically if this led me to publicly affirm something that is false, because now I have publicly committed myself. And so I'm going to become more defensive. I'm going to instinctively defend those cherished beliefs of mine because my reputation's on the line there. I said that God spoke to me.
Yeah.
Really, I was sitting around thinking, and I got kind of this feeling that maybe this is the direction I ought to go. And in order to make myself more comfortable with the decision that I'd come to, it was, God told me to do this. And now once I've said that, I've got to defend that. And that's why so many people, even though when you're discussing the ideas and not the individual, get defensive. Not just because they're core beliefs, but because they're invested in them personally.
Right. And I've actually, one of the exact statements I read, I was on a satanic forum, and it was the modern Satanism, which was a more atheistic type. And I was saying the idea of personal belief stems from, I said it was a valid argument because there's also the brain in the vat theory, which is, like if you were in a matrix, you would have no way of perceiving that. Right. Or similarly, the idea that you can't know anybody else exists, you can only know you exist. And the response I got to that was, just because nobody can truly perceive reality doesn't mean you can redefine it willy-nilly to your religious prejudices.
Absolutely.
And that completely shut me down. And then that day and the next day, because I've been reading The God's Delusion by Dawkins, and I was just thinking, it's really convincing that I should not base my beliefs on something that I have no way of actually knowing. And I also have some other things I was wanting to talk to you about that stem from the idea that if there is no God, then, we can say if there is a God, then it's possible there's an absolute morality. But if there's no God, then I'm arguing that there is no absolute morality, and further that there's no such thing as rights, that rights are kind of an illusion enacted by people's will and like how people generally want to be treated and whether or not they have the power. I think it all comes from power.
I think the God issue is completely irrelevant because I have my perception of what is moral, and it doesn't matter to me if there is a God. If it turns out that this God in the Bible is actually real and I got to face him someday, then my first thing is, hey, wait a minute, is this book an accurate representation of your beliefs? Because if you believe slavery is wrong, then we got a problem because I think you're an immoral ass. And so it doesn't matter whether there's a God as to whether or not there's that is nothing more than might makes right. Of I made the rules and I'm going to enforce them, and my response is okay. I can't stop you from squashing me like a bug, but that doesn't make you morally right, and it doesn't make you morally superior. And if you do decide to squash me like a bug, well, I'll die with the confidence of knowing that I wasn't a prick like you. Now, this issue of
I guess that's your answer to Pascal's wager.
Yeah, if this issue of whether or not there can be, or whether or not rights exist, of course not. It's a construct. We grant people rights. It's not like there's some universal constant that is rights equals blah blah blah. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they're constructs. It doesn't matter that everything that we know, everything that we've ever experienced. Taking a tip from Carl Sagan about us all being on this tiny, insignificant blue dot in the cosmic sense, and yet that blue dot contains every person who's currently alive and every person who's ever lived, every song that's ever been written, every book that's ever been written, every thought that's ever been thought, as far as we know, everything that is within our entire experience. Every idea and moral value, every concept of rights, every concept of the universe that around us that we are aware of that represents humanity, it all comes from there. It doesn't matter that it came from us. It doesn't make it any less significant. I'd argue it makes it more significant.
It's more special anyway.
It's certainly more significant to us.
There you go.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Dylan.
Sure. Have a great time, and I love the show. Keep doing it. And I wish I lived in Austin. I'd try and, apply to be on the show as a host or something.
Okay, doke. Well, if you ever make it down to Austin, let us know.
All right.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
We've got about 5 minutes or so left in the show, if this clock's right, because I can't see that clock. Yeah, it's about 5 minutes. Quick reminders of things that are coming up. Vic Stinger will be in town. It's the 29th.
That's right.
It's a Thursday evening. It's a joint event between ACA and CFI. If you're in the Austin area, you can find out more by going to the website, www.atheist-community.org. It's a one-day only type of thing where we're going to have a quick speaking engagement and then dinner afterwards. There's more information up there.
And we're going to be doing a little video interview of him that will be on our Blip TV website. That'll be kind of a conversation, an interview with Vic Stinger. That we'll be able to share, outside of Austin.
And on November 14th, I believe, which is a Saturday, could be the 15th. I'd have to double check. 14th or 15th, whichever one's the Saturday, that's the Texas Free Thought Convention. You can go to texasfreethoughtconvention.com for more information. That'll be in San Antonio. All the information needs up there. Dan Barker, Vic Stinger, I don't know. There's a laundry list of people who will be coming down to speak on that day, and a lot of events for families as well. They're trying to make it as family friendly as possible. Stuff for the kids to do. If you're in Texas, this is a Texas-wide thing. Last year it was in Austin. This year it's in San Antonio.
Great networking opportunity.
I'll be going down, and it's a good opportunity, as Don said, to get the disparate groups together so that we can establish better communication and let people know what's going on. That way, the San Antonio group doesn't decide to have a river walk on the same night as our bat cruise. We could set them a week apart, and we could go to both because it's good stuff.
Yeah, San Antonio is it's another giant city. It's very close to Austin, though. It's
But Austin's way better. I mean, like way better. What other events? We got the lecture coming up. I don't have the information on it.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll just have to save it for next time.
I guess we'll try and get one last caller in, maybe two. So we've got Kate from British Columbia. Hello? Kate? Testing. Kate. We lost Kate. Sorry.
Okay.
We got Jason in Tampa.
Yeah, hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, I have a question about a Ken Miller quote. You know who Ken Miller is of Brown University.
Catholic,
Yeah,
evolution supporter.
Exactly.
Instrumental in the
Roman Catholic,
case in Dover. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
he's one of the best though at defending evolution and demolishing creationism and intelligent design.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he wrote this interesting. I don't know. It's an essay, and part of it's in one of his books. It's called "Does Science Make Belief in God Obsolete?"
Mm-hmm.
One of the quotes I wanted to share. I mean, real quick. He says the categorical mistake of the atheist is to assume that God is natural and within the realm of science to investigate and test. But then he says, and this is what I want your take on, God is not and cannot be part of nature.
I can answer that.
I disagree with both parts, but I'll let Don go.
Well,
Go for it.
if there is a God and the God has some sort of effect in the natural world, we can measure that effect. And in fact, we can actually look for a lot of different things where people have made religious claims that God does this or that or the other. God answers prayer, God created the universe, God whatever. You know, there's a lot of claims, and we can investigate those claims. If it's the case that God has no effect on the natural world, then it's irrelevant. He's irrelevant.
Yeah. It's not a category mistake on the part of atheists. We don't define God. We don't assume that God is natural. We address claims made by theists about their God. If somebody says, I believe in a God that's entirely supernatural and has no effect on the natural world and doesn't manifest in any way, well, congratulations. You believe something you can't possibly have a good reason for, and it doesn't matter at all because it can't affect my life or anybody else's. It's not a category mistake. We assess claims. If they're real, they're real. If they're not, they're not. That's how we pretty much determine all reality. I got to let you go. Thanks to everybody on the crew for doing everything that they could to make the show great despite technical problems. We'll be back again next week. Join us down at Threadgill shortly. Bye-bye.